Hey, Econ kids. This is the beginning of section 12. We have two different types of firms we're going to cover in here, oligopolies and monopolistically competitive firms. If you look at the different firms that we talk about, we got four total. One side is going to have perfect competition, the other side is going to have monopoly, and then these are the firms that fit in the in-between. Perfect competition, there's lots and lots and lots of firms. In a monopoly, there's one. And so then in the middle, you have an oligopoly that just has a few firms, and then you have monopolistically competitive firms, which have a bunch of them, but probably not as much as your perfectly competitive firms. So in your oligopolies today, we're looking at different types of firms, and there's only a few producers in these things. So the first thing that you have to remember, back on page 573 and 74, when we were right at the end of section 10 and before we started section 11, there was a chart. And in that chart, it had all the different types of firms and like how many firms were in the market, what they kind of produced. Oligopolies is the one that has a few producers. Like there might only be two. Oftentimes we'll look at a duopoly, which is two, and we're going to use some game theory trying to figure out, hey, can we determine how firms will behave? The other thing that you're going to remember is that they're interdependent. Interdependent means that they have some sort of impact on the other firm in the market. How does that work? Well, if we have two firms that we're looking at, let's say there's two people both producing the same item in De Pere. One of them is going to, I'm going to sell my product for $500, and I talk to you and I say, hey, you should sell your product for $500 too. We're the only two producers. If we both sold it for $500, we make a nice profit, and then we would walk away and be all happy. Well, that's how interdependence works. Like people talk, and all of a sudden the prices are about the same, and that's the way it is. Now, if I formally agree with you, or we put this down in writing that we're going to charge the same thing, or I don't know if it's found out we had a meeting about it or something like that, that is illegal. Whether it's overt or whether it was tacit, it doesn't make a difference. Any type of collusion is going to be illegal, tough to prove sometimes. So when you look at that interdependence, I am dependent on the other people in there, but again, it's going to be tough to prove that we colluded out of the price. And the other problem is, when you're interdependent like that, there's incentives to cheat all over the place. So if I say, hey, I'm going to keep mine at $500, and then you say you're going to do that too, and then price day comes out, or the ad comes out in the paper or online or wherever it is, and when they come to my store, I have it priced for $450. And then I get a whole bunch of people to my store, I sell out of the item, nobody goes to your store because you had it set at $500. Next time you see me, you're going to say, hey, what was up with that? Why did you charge $450? And I'll be like, oh, I don't know, sorry, forgot about that. Had a last minute decision. And then the next time I try to set price with you or talk about price or anything like that, you just won't believe me. So the hard part for these interdependent firms is you can't really trust the other guy because there's always some sort of incentive to cheat, and at the same time, you are sort of dependent on that person to set your price. So interdependence is the key one here. When you look at some of that collusion stuff, we could sort of restrict price, but maintaining that collusive agreement is going to be very difficult, and of course, it is illegal. So whenever anybody's dealing with this kind of stuff, there is always that thought of, ooh, what if I get caught, right? So as we look at these collusive agreements, there are some people that did some studies and things on that. You can look up those guys in your textbook. They just talked about how you can undercut competition on maybe price, but then you could also do it on things like quantity, trying to put too much into the market versus hold back your supply to keep the prices different, etc. So that's it for Module 64. A little bit more Module 65 as you get into some game theory stuff. But remember, interdependence is the key, and maintaining any sort of collusive agreement is going to be very difficult, and at the same time, it's also illegal. All right, thanks a lot. See you next time.